Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight in Our News.
The country's latest traffic fatality happening here on John F. Kennedy Drive.
Amid talks of a strike, the Water and Sewage Management and union come to an agreement.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I am Jared Higgs. Topping news tonight, the attorney of a 29-year-old woman charged in connection with recent child abductions told the court today his client suffers from mental health issues. The woman was charged in the magistrate's court with 4 counts of abduction days after she was arrested. It was the first official look at the woman who police say is responsible for abducting 4 boys in the span of 6 weeks. 29-year-old Deidre Gibson was charged with 4 counts of abduction under the Sexual Offences Act. The earliest accusation stems from a February 16th incident where prosecutors say Gibson abducted a 3-year-old boy on New Providence. The other 3 abductions dated March 6th, 7th, and 29th all involved 8-year-old boys. The 29-year-old wasn't required to enter a plea to the charges. That's because her attorney, Howard Thompson Jr., was able to convince Magistrate Samuel McKinney that his client needs a psychiatric evaluation. Thompson says after being hired by Gibson's family, he visited her several times, including Thursday morning, and found their conversations to be bizarre and incomprehensible. He added that last year, his client was a psychiatric patient at Brookdale University Hospital in New York. After asking Gibson her name and date of birth, questions she was able to answer, Magistrate McKinney suggested that Gibson was coherent and Thompson ought to try and give her advice. After a brief conversation, and with Gibson offering confused reactions to what her attorney was telling her, McKinney decided that the 29-year-old would not elect which court would hear her matter or enter a plea to the charges. Instead, she was remanded to Sandilands Rehabilitation Center for evaluation. She will return to court on May 13th at 10 a.m. for a report from that institution. Commissioner of Police Anthony Ferguson is dismissing concerns expressed by some who say it is suspect for the police force to investigate its own officers in police-involved shootings. Ferguson asserted it's Parliament that has the last say. This as he defended the force's decision to keep an officer on active duty even after a coroner's court jury found he unlawfully killed a 22-year-old man nearly 3 years ago. Jasmine Brown reports.
The commissioner's comments come one day after the family of Osworth Rowe pleaded for justice, asking for criminal charges to be brought against the officer who shot him to death. On Tuesday afternoon, a 5-member jury unanimously ruled that Rowe, who was shot in the head and chest, was unlawfully killed by Officer Kendrick Brown. When asked if he was concerned about the ruling, the commissioner said this.
I like to stay in my lane. I think sometimes we tend to jump the gun so quickly when we hear things. I'm not inclined to comment on any decision made in another arena. But the police officers will continue to do their jobs, and we are mandated by law to protect the Bahamian people, prevention and detection of crime, and so we will continue to do that.
There have also been concerns raised about the officer involved in the shooting. During his testimony in court, Brown claimed Rowe pointed a gun at officers, but that has been disputed by key witnesses in the case. As for Officer Brown still being on active duty, Ferguson said at this time there is no reason under law to reprimand him.
The law mandates the commissioner to supervise the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and at this stage the officer is on active duty, and there's nothing that prevents him from not being on active duty.
The commissioner also responded to concerns raised over police investigations into matters involving officers on the force. Coroner Janine Weish-Gomez told the jury in her summation in the Osworth Rowe matter that we have no special task force to investigate an officer in a police-involved shooting. The coroner also noted that if there is a fatal police shooting in this jurisdiction, it is the police who will investigate the police. Ferguson was asked about those concerns. He said while he has confidence in the police investigators, it's an issue that is above his pay grade, as he insisted that's an issue that can be handled in Parliament.
I have great confidence in the Parliament of our Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and if the Parliament so desires some change in legislation, they will do so. But until that happens, I think the police ought to be focusing on locking up criminals and putting them before the court.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
An horrific accident on John F. Kennedy Drive claimed the life of a young father who reportedly crashed into a utility pole while on his way to work. Georgie O'Bain reports.
The drive to work ending fatally for a man heading west on John F. Kennedy Drive as his white Honda Accord hitting one utility pole and smashing into another.
Shortly after 10 o'clock a.m., the police at Traffic Division were alerted to a road traffic collision on John F. Kennedy Drive, just west of the Fusion Complex. Upon arrival at the scene, the police met a 2007 Honda Accord with extensive damages to its passenger side and with front-end damages. Police also discovered that a male, believed to be in his mid-20s, on the inside of that vehicle. Unfortunately, this male succumbed to his injuries at the scene.
According to Superintendent Marino Hines, the jaws of life had to be used to remove the man's body from the vehicle that was wrapped around the high-voltage utility pole. Bahamas Power and Light workers were called to the scene while police carried out their preliminary investigation.
We believe that he touched some of the light poles before he came down, colliding into the shrubbery on the southern end of this thoroughfare, before ultimately colliding into the high-tension utility pole.
The victim's shoe, the car's battery, and front bumper were all scattered outside the white 2007 Honda Accord. The victim's cousin and employer, Leonardo Lightbourne, was on the scene and said he was confused as to why his cousin, whom he identified as 25-year-old Keyshawn Lightbourne, was speeding heading to work when it seemed as though he was nearly a half hour early. Lightbourne was said to be headed to work for his 11 a.m. shift at Mr. Shippett. His cousin described him as a hard-working, determined young father who had so much more life to live.
We believe that speed may have contributed to this accident. We are in our preliminary stages of this investigation, but it is too early to tell what caused the accident definitively.
Seatbelts?
We're still looking at the investigation. We won't be able to say at this point whether or not he was wearing a seatbelt. However, we are examining that very carefully.
Hines warned drivers that the speed limit is 45 miles per hour on the long thoroughfare. He made this familiar plea to motorists.
We always advise our drivers, particularly on this thoroughfare, to wear their seatbelts and to not speed. We know that it is a long journey, it's a long thoroughfare, but we recognize that speed does not make your situation better. So we would ask that persons not drive distracted with cell phones, eating food, fixing hair, or anything may cause them to lose awareness of what they're doing as a driver.
With changes on the way for the Road Traffic Act, Hines said police have embarked on an intense education, awareness, and enforcement campaign. Reporting for our news, I'm Georgie O'Bain.
An elderly man who lives in his vehicle is appealing to the public for help finding a home. Jillian Gray has the story.
If you drove past this 1998 Daewoo, you probably wouldn't suspect that it's someone's home.
Do you want help to get out of your car?
Yeah. I gotta move. Since you gave me a house, I gotta move.
Leonis Louis is not a man of many words. When we met him, he was limping towards his car to rest for the day. The retired gardener journeyed from Haiti over 50 years ago and only recently lost his ability to provide a substantial income when he stopped cleaning yards. Louis has no family in the Bahamas and told us it has been quite a while since he visited or heard from his relatives in Haiti. However, his neighbors have become like family, acting as his support system by providing food and ensuring that Louis lives as comfortably as he can in the four-door wagon.
Your neighbors help you with food?
Mm-hmm.
And you get water? Are there any pumps around here or anything?
Pump right there.
Okay.
And so sleeping, is it comfortable sleeping in there?
No.
Louis used to live just steps away from where his white station wagon is parked, but had to move into his car after he could no longer afford to pay his landlord the full amount in rent. Though Louis could not say how long he lived in the car, the dashboard shows that the station wagon had not been licensed since 2015. That's when his neighbor, Rita Thompson, said she believes Louis moved into the car. Pots and pans, cups, blankets, and even a laundry basket are all piled up in the car. Thompson said her neighbor lives just as any other resident.
You wouldn't want to see him washing his clothes. You wouldn't want to see him cooking. He's cleaning off his meat just like in a normal kitchen. This is what life is for a constituent of the Freetown constituency.
Residents who know Louis' needs often try to help by hiring him for odd jobs. While neighbors are happy to help, Thompson said it's sad to know that there are government agencies designed to help residents, but nothing is being done for this senior citizen.
We have to assist this man with getting a meal, and we have urban renewal just steps away from where these people live. And I have a problem with that because the government continue to hire people and put them in these offices called urban renewal, but they do not have a heart for our communities. If you had a heart, people in this community would not still be living like this.
As an advocate for those in the community who cannot help themselves, Thompson is appealing on behalf of Louis to anyone who can help with a permanent place to live.
Whoever can assist and help, we are appealing. There's also another old woman over there who I even take y'all to. Y'all wouldn't want to see her house.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Following 3 tense meetings, executive management and union leaders at the Water and Sewerage Corporation have reached a resolution. However, the president of the Bahamas Utilities Services and Allied Workers Union made it clear a strike vote isn't off the table. He spoke with Kyle Joaquin.
We spoke with the union president not long after their meeting, and he said surprisingly things went so well that they even smiled and shook hands.
The meeting went so well this morning that I don't want to damage the relationship. I want that relationship to remain intact. And that's why I started out by thanking the executive chairman and the stakeholders.
It's a far cry from this scene last week. After 3 meetings this week alone, the union and management at the Water and Sewage Corporation are on good terms, somewhat. The issue that started it all, one employee suspension over a car left in the yard, has reportedly been dealt with.
The individual himself agreed, although the union was looking for no cut and pay. Yeah. But once the individual is prepared to settle, then it leaves the union no other alternative than discontinue the dispute.
Former Bahamas Christian Council President Reverend Dr. Ranford Patterson and others from the Department of Labor sat in as mediators during the closed-door meetings. But Union President Dwayne Wood says despite coming to an agreement on 2 issues, the plan for a strike vote on the 17th is still on. Here's why.
The employees and the union would have went to trade disputes from 2017. And up to now, we have no movement on those disputes, despite the director, the past and the present director of labor advising the corporation to move on matters.
So you're still moving ahead for the strike certificate?
Yes, by all means.
But that's not all. The union president is still not receiving his $60K salary, and those who took part in that demonstration last week will lose 2 days' pay. However, Wood said he's hopeful negotiations will continue and that they won't have to utilize their strike certificate if they get it.
We haven't met in a year and 9 months, and within 2 days of meeting, we were laughing and shaking hands, and we parted on that note this morning.
You and the executive chairman?
Yeah. So I want to keep that relationship, and I want to also extend that olive branch to the chairman and his executive team as well as his board going forward.
Labor Director John Pender last week described the relationship between Water and Sewage Executive Chairman Adrian Gibson and the union as disrespectful. But Woods disagrees.
I don't see my relationship with the executive chairman as disrespectful. However, a man has to be a man, regardless to what position he's in. And a man should be able to speak his mind free of victimization, intimidation, or discrimination.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Still to come on Our News, more than 100 police from 32 divisions honored. Stay tuned.